You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Let me see. All right, man, we're rolling. I'm here with Josh Felker.
Yep.
Of Lone Star Handgun.
Yeah.
And like I told you earlier, when I first met you, you were in shirts, and we did the concealed carry class. And then I saw you guys moved out here, and you blew up.
I guess you could say it blew up. It's just we expanded. So I started the company after I got back from Iraq around 2005. I was not knowing what I wanted to do after I got out of the Army. My wife was still active duty, and
y'all served in at the same time?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, dual status. And I was an infantryman. She was a dietitian for the Army, and anyhow, I was a stay-at-home dad because she was trying to get her time and service and ETS out of the Army. So I was not knowing what I wanted to do, and so I started doing this with another gentleman, a guy named Sammy Miller. He was I took my class from him and started doing some range stuff for him on the side, and then I started my own thing, and it just grew and grew and grew. 2008, we decided to lease storefront up in Shirts off of 3009 retail, where we didn't really sell anything except for the classes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Then fast forward, I think it was around 2012-ish. We were doing the classes. We were the only ones that had the fingerprints on site, electronic fingerprints. And then Sandy Hook happened. After Sandy Hook, my wife and I were sitting in the Bush's Chicken in Shirts, and we decided, we were talking about what could we do, because like everyone, Sandy Hook was a big freaking deal. And I made the suggestion to her. I was like, why don't we offer these classes free for teachers? She thought it was a good idea. Went home that night, sent out a press release, and then the next day, the phone was exploding.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you still do that for teachers?
No, that was just that limited time frame. So what we did, we had limited range use because we were renting range space at Kitty Hawk Airfield, which is an interesting story. That's where Bin Laden's brother died on an ultralight accident. But
oh, really?
Yeah. So we had 7 classes during that Christmas break after Sandy Hook, and I filled all those class spots with teachers. I had over 500 teachers sign up within like 24 hours. But it also got us national and international attention. I was on a number of radio, TV, talk shows. I got a call from Japan. I had no idea what they were saying, but they were talking to me about it. We were on the Glenn Beck show for it. Okay. And we took the all that publicity, positive publicity we got, and took that cash and bought this 127 acres out here.
How much of it is developed right now? Because y'all got a lot going on out here.
Yeah, so I've probably got, I've got about 5 acres that's just for the range property. The rest is ag exempt. We just developed another 20 plus, almost 30 acres in down near the creek for our sporting clays. We're opening up 10 station sporting clays, 5 stand, and all sorts of stuff. And sporting clays is like golf with a shotgun.
Yeah I like the 5 stand. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, 5 stand's fun. Wait until you do sporting clays.
Really?
You have, if you, by your reaction, I know you haven't done it yet.
No, so I've been doing the 5 stand.
You literally get on a golf cart. They have 10 different stations.
Oh, okay.
Each station's different. The throwers throw from different. It's all in the mesquite, so it's entertaining all day long.
That's pretty cool.
And you can change it up. 5 stand's nice and fun, but you're in a static position, right? This is, you're in the woods, you're moving, and it's relaxing.
That's pretty cool.
It's a lot of fun. That's going to open up in about 2 weeks. We're going to have a grand
I've never heard
up.
of that before. Is there any other places doing anything?
The only place that does it here in San Antonio is the National Shooting Complex, the Nationals, and that's where they do the International Sporting Clays competition every year. That's up here in October. The next closest would be private ranches. I think there's one out towards, the closest one is actually way past towards San Marcos, but it's not a cheap endeavor. Those machines are about $5,000 a piece.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I've got to think, just in the sporting clay field, we've got over $160,000 invested.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of freaking money. I picked up 3 golf carts in Dallas this week, because people need golf carts to
Yeah.
rent. We got our first corporate event this upcoming Tuesday where we got 20 people that are coming to San Antonio for one of the conferences. Their company's paying for them to come out. So
That's awesome.
we have to provide shotguns, ammo, rental carts, and everything. Yeah.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because shotgun sporting clays specifically is something that most center fired shooters, guys that normally do rifles and pistols, they don't transcend over to the shotgun side because it's a rich man's sport. Because it's not a cheap thing to get into, unlike you can just put a dirt berm anywhere. And vice versa, those that shoot sporting clays generally don't get into the rifle pistol side of things. So this is kind of a mesh where you can do both. And as I'm doing the sporting clays, I'm starting to understand more and more why there's dedicated sporting clay ranges, because it's a cash freaking cow.
Really?
Houston, this weekend, there's a sporting clay club where they're doing a corporate charity. I think today they've got 400 shooters. Tomorrow they've got over 600 shooters.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's a morning and afternoon shift. The owner of that place, he has, what he said, I think he said he's got 90 golf carts that he owns, and he's going to have to rent another 50 of them for just tomorrow.
That is crazy.
So, yeah, I can see why more and more sporting clay is like, okay, it makes pretty good money.
I had never even thought about it. The only place I've ever seen, I guess was the San Antonio Gun Club is typically where I'd go for the 5-stand.
And that's you generally you're running clays and 5-stand. That's about it.
Yeah.
Because it requires a decent amount of property. To do sporting clays somewhat properly, you need at least 20 to 30 acres just dedicated for that.
Wow.
And as real estate values go up and up and up.
Yeah.
What's nice about
even driving out here, you see all the housing going up, and it's kind
of there's 3 subdivisions that have already platted and got approval that are touching the range property border, and people are asking pretty regularly because there's another subdivision that's I mean, within a mile of here, there's 5,000 houses that got built in the past year and a half. Does this concern me? And I go, well, it concerns me a little bit, but I see it as opportunities for new shooters.
Sure.
I have a lot of those new homeowners. They come out and they've either shot here before or they bought specifically so they could be close to a gun range.
Yeah.
So one of the things we have going for us, other than we have a decent sized amount of property, is we're 2/3 of us is surrounded by floodplain.
Oh, okay.
So there's quite a bit that can't be developed around us.
Right.
And so that's
pretty smart. Was that part of buying this property? Did you take that into consideration?
It was definitely looking at it hard because it's all about containment.
Yeah.
I mean, 127 acres sounds like a lot until you pull the trigger on a rifle.
Right.
And then and
you've got people living right next door. They're going to say, hey, I know you've been here 10 years, but can you stop doing that?
Well, I'm not concerned about that. There's a law, it's called the Range Protection Act, and I want to say it's from 2011.
Okay.
State of Texas basically put in a state law that says if a range exists and it's containing all of its rounds, so rounds aren't leaving the property,
right,
which is understandable. That range cannot be shut down with developments coming in around them. There's no noise ordinances unless they were already in part of a city that requires a noise ordinance and stuff like that. So all these factors came into place when we looked at it and go, okay. So as we have subdivisions coming in around us, you don't want to be stupid with how you do things. Running tannerite at midnight or something like that. But as long as people see us, as long as we have more friends than we do enemies, advocates see us as a community, as good for the community. So I have about 15 different law enforcement agencies that shoot out here regularly. We don't charge law enforcement agencies unless they have funds to pay for it.
Oh, gotcha.
Military as well. I mean, units that
that's got to help for like smaller communities that have like 4 or 5 police officers or something.
Yeah, I mean, for as much money is thrown at small governments and governments in general, including law enforcement agencies for their stuff, technology, but there's not a lot of money thrown for range use. In Bexar County, there's a Bexar County Sheriff's Range, and that's limited on how often people can go in and shoot. Agencies. San Antonio Police Department's got its own range, but it's I believe that's only a 25, 35 yard range.
Oh, really?
It's not much of a range. What's nice about out here is those agencies that come out here to use us, They can do low light. They could do demolition. They could do breaching. They can bring their vehicles on. You know, the founding fathers designed.
Oh, so you have space out here for them to run like practice runs with their vehicles and whatnot.
Mm-hmm, if they wanted to. Yeah,
that's awesome.
The founders intended you to shoot on an outdoor range, not on an indoor range.
Yeah.
Nice thing about indoor ranges though is it's contained.
Yeah.
And they're generally air conditioned.
They don't like steel ammo though.
They don't like anything, and it's not they don't like steel ammo. It has everything to do with when you are recycling the casings. If you don't have to sort steel or aluminum out of your brass, because brass gets a higher premium. So a lot of ranges, they don't allow people to pick up their own brass. The policy is once it hits the floor, it's the ranges. We allow, if you pick up your own brass and not somebody else's, we don't care about it. And we'll sort through steel, aluminum. We have machines that do it. I've got guys that do it. So do y'all have it to where people clean up after themselves? Do you have a team that comes in afterwards? So when people get done shooting, we ask that they just sweep it forward. Okay. And when they sweep it forward, it goes in. There's a concrete pad with a kind of an edge wall that we, at the end of a couple times a week, we'll just go police up all that and pick it all up and put it into wheelbarrows, and then we take it over to the brass sorter that sorts out the 22s, that sorts out the trash, gets the steel, and the aluminum we have to hand pick out because there's no aluminum magnets yet. Yeah. But and then we recycle the brass every month.
And so y'all have the training facilities like that. You have the sporting clays that's coming up. You had a really nice archery range out front. We opened that up last year. Archery goes out to 80 yards. Most guys don't shoot that far, but it's just to say we have the longest shot in San Antonio for the most part. Archery is kind of a nice thing, especially with the shortage of ammo during the pandemic. You know, aside from throwing rocks at the steel targets, archery was it's cheap and easy, and it's fun. Have you ever gotten into archery? I've done a little bit of archery. You like it? I love it. I enjoy it. Yeah. I'm not hardcore into it, and part of that probably has to do with, I own a shooting range, so when I go to relax, it's generally not pulling the trigger. Yeah. The way I relax is I ride my motorcycle and I jump out of airplanes pretty regularly. So. Oh, really? Yeah. Where do you jump in San Marcos? Yeah, up at Fentress. Okay. I'm going up there next Saturday to do a night jump. Wow. I just got into last year. There's an organization called Round Canopy Parachute Team. They're based out of Florida, and what they are is it's a nonprofit that jumps static line. Okay. So I, last February, went down there and we jumped out of a C-47, which is the World War II aircraft. Oh, cool. I mean, you feel it's like when you go to the Alamo, it's sacred grounds. You jump out of one of those old aircraft that was possibly involved in D-Day, and some of them are, and World War II. You're just like, you can feel the energy from it, and it was cool jumping static line. I hadn't jumped static line in over 20 years since I got out of the Army, and that's cool. And then at the end of the month, I'm going back down there, and we're being jumping out of a Huey. So really? I'm excited about that. I'm gonna do a water jump too. I've never done that. Oh, really? And that's just landing in the water. Mm-hmm. What do you have to do? Do you have to get rid of the chute before you get down? So when you as you're preparing to land, and whether it be static line or free fall, you're going to do some things so when you hit the water, you can get rid of that, jettison that equipment, and get out from underneath the canopy. Yeah. So there's some things you do, and that's pretty cool, man. Looking forward to it. That's way cooler than anything I do. Usually, when I want to go relax, I go shoot guns. Yeah. Well, shooting a machine gun's fun, but as a business owner, I'm thinking to myself, how much did that cost me? Yeah. My overhead. With the sporting clays, we were out there this morning, and two of my older gentlemen members, Joe and Bob, they're like coffee club out here. Every morning during the weekday, they come out and shoot, and they got the first opportunity to run that sporting clays course. None of my guys, including myself, we just literally got it set up yesterday. Yeah, it sounds like it's been just boom, boom, nobody's been on it. Yeah. And so we gave them the honor to go through it. We didn't charge them. They shot at about 120, 130 clays this morning. Oh. And we were working through bugs and stuff like that. But I was out there and I was talking to my range manager, Larry. I was like, this is going to be this is fun. Yeah. And the cool thing about birdshot or whatever you're using, you're not going to break the bank buying that kind of stuff. No, but it's 300 blackout's going to kill you. It's a breakfast taco every time you pull the trigger. But almost. But the problem with shotgun ammo is just like the same problem we had with centerfire. Centerfire's coming back. Shotgun ammo is difficult to find. Oh, really? Now. Oh, yeah. Well, I came across a whole bunch of it a while back. I guess I got lucky. So.
Well, a whole bunch. When you run sporting clays, you're usually doing about 100 rounds. So.
Oh, okay. I probably don't have. I'm probably around 500 rounds.
Your reserve
like
will get eaten up quickly because it's kind of like anything with shooting. Like when you first started shooting reactive steel, it's kind of like crack cocaine. Mm-hmm. You want more and more. It's that instant dopamine when you hit. Same thing with the clays. Man, when they're flying, you want to just watch them burst.
When they burst, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, when I first started, when it was years and years ago, my dad was kind of not. Now he loves guns. He's got a hard time seeing, but he loves guns now. When we were kids, it was kind of like, no, we don't need them in the house. Mm-hmm. And so when we first started shooting, it took a while to catch the ammo's more expensive than the clay. So let's just take one shot per clay instead of three. So my sister was notorious for wasting ammo like that, but she built a little berm out at her place. So typically when we go shoot, we go out there, but now I'm gonna start coming here, man. It's a lot closer. You've also got handguns. You've got rifle up to like, what was it, 100 yards?
No, rifle goes out to 300 yards on reactive steel. We got reactive steel targets at 1, 2. I think I've got some spinners at 250, and then I got 3. And in the next year, we're gonna reorient the rifle range and do some changes up to that as well. During the pandemic, or early days especially, when I didn't know what to do with my guys, I didn't want to lay them off when nobody knew what was going to happen. So we started spending money on developing. We put in the...
I remember seeing that. You poured a bunch of concrete, too.
Poured a bunch of concrete, put that massive parking lot out there. There's over 200 parking spot positions.
Yeah, it's huge.
And just put that money back in the range because I didn't want to lay my guys off.
Yeah.
But there was not a lot of people shooting, but there was people buying guns like crazy. So we've done developments on this range. And it's kind of nice whenever somebody comes out, and they haven't been here for a couple months or however long, and they're like, man, you've made changes. And it goes back, I guess, to the infantryman in me, always be developing your position, redefining it, refining it, and making it better and better. My wife's always kind of upset. It's like, why are we putting money back into the range? Well, because it helps us grow. And it's better to have that than be stagnant and not growing, because there's plenty of ranges out there. Most outdoor ranges, in fact, where they get to a spot or barely anything and they don't grow. They keep their money, and there's nothing wrong with that, but reinvesting it so your customer has a good experience.
And they're not to put any sort of names out there and anything like that, but there was one range in particular I used to go to, and it was, and after a while you could tell that they quit putting money back in the range, and the range was falling apart, and things didn't work the way they were supposed to, and after a while it wasn't worth the drive anymore.
No.
And then you get some indoor places that open up, and those are nice to go to, but it's nice to be outside shooting.
It really is, especially this past year when we're all cramped up inside. Oh, yeah. It's nice to get outdoors, and this is it's an activity you can be outdoors. But yeah, I understand the outdoor ranges not putting money back in, because you get to a level where you think you're good enough, and you'll never grow past that. And people want change. They want to see it get better and better and better. So we got big plans out here. We're going to be building a dedicated new retail spot in the next 2 years.
Okay.
We're talking 10 to 15,000 square feet.
Back in town?
No. Here. Right here.
Okay.
Here. Yeah, we'll get out of these portable buildings and, put it on our big boy pants and have an established. Awesome. So the thing with like indoor ranges are generally pretty nice because there's, I call them, it's basically the country clubs.
Yeah.
Instagram crowds and stuff like that. There's a lot of money sunk into it by somebody that has more money than they know what to do with. And I think sometimes it's just they'd rather spend their money on a range than give it to the government.
Yeah.
Because it's the deduction. Or it's the, I don't know, lack of a better term, Tony Starks of the world.
Yeah.
They want to look, hey, I own a range, and I got these machine guns and stuff like that. They're generally not trigger pullers, people that enjoy shooting. And indoor ranges are nice. There's usually millions and millions of dollars sunk into them. That overhead makes it difficult, I think, to turn a profit at the end of the day. And some of them really don't. They frankly don't. There's plenty of ranges up in North Dallas and West Texas that the oil below them pays for everything. So if they don't make any money, that's okay. But the problem with an indoor range to me is it's just very claustrophobic.
Sure.
When you're shooting at 15, 25 yards and you've got only maybe 7 or 10 shooting positions, I'm not saying that's not fun. I like to be able to do more.
Yeah.
Shoot farther distances, have reactive steel, have the private bays where you shoot and move. Not worry about what I'm breathing in. One of the challenges of an indoor range is to clean the air.
Yeah.
Running those HEPA filter systems and a quality.
That's real expensive. I was telling you, I work in an engineering firm,
Yeah.
and those types of HVAC units are through the roof.
Well, yeah. So when I was investigating doing an indoor range years ago, I was looking at it, and I think it was at the NRA convention. They put on a range development conference every year that talks about ranges, and indoor ranges are spoken of heavily. Used to be the average you're looking at per stall was $30 an hour in electrical fees because you're constantly moving the air and filtering it. So a range that's has good modern equipment in it, filtration systems, there is nothing to be worried about. Going down range, there's stuff on the ground and particulates and lead, but that's the nice thing about an outdoor range. Mother Nature takes care of all that stuff. You're not generally breathing in the particulates and crap like that. And I'm not trying to discredit indoor ranges.
It's true. Sure.
There's uses for them. There very are. In a heavily populated area, or when it's hotter than the sun, indoor range.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it gets brutal down here in summertime too. But a little bit of sun shade goes a long way. A little bit of cool breeze, I have almost 85 dedicated just shooting positions on the line.
Oh, really?
So you're not coming up here waiting 20, 30, 45 minutes to get on the range to shoot.
Yeah.
We got plenty of spots. And that's the nice thing. We can grow while, you're pretty limited on indoor range. So
yeah, that's I think typically the ones that I've been to, you might have 10 to 15 spots or something. So you are waiting.
And you're paying a premium. Yeah. I mean, it's not, $12.95 you can shoot all day out here. Yeah. I don't care. Indoor ranges, you're generally paying by the hour.
Yeah.
It's air conditioned and it's nice, but that to me it's where it ends. It's loud, it's claustrophobic. That guy that shoots that new muzzle brake right next to you, it just clears your sinuses, and it's not a conducive environment to me for especially a new shooter.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's loud.
Speaking of new shooters, one thing that I thought was pretty cool is the past, I say 2 years, I think has been a real eye-opener for a lot of people. And even people who have kind of been on the fence with wanting to buy guns or even to own one gun. I think there's been a lot of new buyers. I think it was like last March or whatever it was. There was like 4.5 million gun sales or something like that. So one thing that I always encourage people to do is to get to know your weapon. Hold on to it. See where all the trigger is, the trigger guard, the magazine release, how the slide works, and work with it, right? But one thing and I tell everybody, unless you're one of these guys on the internet who are shooting every day, all day long, you don't shoot enough. So it's very important to get out here, to get to the range. And a lot of times you go to some ranges and it feels uncomfortable for your novice, or it feels uncomfortable for somebody's wife or somebody's kid. Yeah. So the cool thing that I noticed you guys have been doing is like the date night shooting ranges or the women's classes, and even the I guess more of the tactical shooting multiple targets and things like that. Where did that come from? Was that you or your wife? Because I know that she works here too, right?
Yeah, I always joke, my wife owns the place and I manage it.
Okay.
Even though we're both on the LLC. So, it was real important to us when we opened this or started planning this and stuff to make it a welcoming environment for all. Because I think the worst thing you can do is where it's for lack of a better term, boys club, and you've got to be in the know on how to do this. The secret knock, and they'll open the door for you type thing. So we want new shooters. We want people to come up here and feel relaxed, but it's also a environment where they can learn, but and feel safe on, but not to the point where you have the range Nazis,
right?
The range masters that. The minute you screw up, you're kicked off, and all that other stuff. Understand,
I've literally been to one of those.
You hate it, don't you?
Yeah,
you hate it.
Yeah,
you leave with a sour taste in your mouth, and you're like, I don't need.
I've only been there once. I never went back.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we disappoint people all the time too. the bar is set real low when it comes to outdoor ranges, especially. But so we wanted to, make it so we got indoor plumbing. I mean, for an outdoor range, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
You don't fall through the floorboards as you go through inside. But an environment where it is welcoming, and for new shooters as well as somebody that's got experience, that they're able to do stuff that they want to and learn and grow, but it's a safe environment where somebody's not breathing down their neck all the time. And that was important to us. It's important to my wife. We did these Ladies Learn to Shoot called Daughters of Texas classes because there's a lot of people, ladies especially, that are on the board, and the worst person to teach them how to shoot is husbands, brothers, dads.
My wife hates it when I take her.
Boyfriends and all that other stuff. It's somebody else needs to.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I work together real well, but we're the worst ones to train each other on anything because that's the environment.
Typical.
But somebody else does it. So I started the Ladies Learn to Shoot, and she's transitioned into it because even though she's a Army veteran and she's got more experience than a lot of guys out there, it took a while for her to feel comfortable in a training, teaching environment because of the idea that if you're a woman, you have to fit in a certain profile to be a trigger puller or a shooter or teach somebody. So she enjoys doing that class a lot. Those ladies leave that class majority of the time and they want to go buy guns that day. They feel a little bit more comfortable, and they get rid of the idea that I need to own a revolver. That is the worst thing for a brand new shooter to own. And people can argue that all day about the simplicity of a revolver, but loading a revolver is not necessarily the easiest thing. Pulling that 10 to 12 pound trigger to the rear is not fun.
Sure.
5 rounds, all that recoil is felt in your arm, body, while on a semi-automatic, that magazine can hold 6 to 15, 20 rounds of ammunition. Once you teach somebody how to manipulate the slide properly, and it is usually about technique, that recoil is absorbed a lot by the slide. It's a lot more enjoyable. The idea that you buy this gun, you buy this revolver, you put it in your nightstand, never look at it again, but if you need it, you just aim kind of and point and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
That might work, and it may not. I
think the likelihood is very low of it working.
I want the odds more in your favor.
Right.
If you've got a driver's license and you never drive but every 5-7 years, you don't have the experience if under a stressful situation.
And that's the key right there, is the stressful situation.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I try, and when I talk to people about going to the gun range or shooting or just guns in general, people say, well, I go to the gun range and I go once every 6 months and I shoot around every 3 minutes because I'm aiming very well. But there's been a few times, and granted, we live in a decent part of town, and we haven't really had anything crazy happen. But there's been times where our house alarm will go off in the middle of the night, whether it's the weather or something sends that alarm off. And granted, you have way more experience than I do, but for a novice person, somebody who has guns and shoots every now and then, when you wake up in the middle of the night and your heart's beating through the roof and it's saying, garage door is open, you were literally just asleep and your heart rate was probably 50. Now all of a sudden it's 120.
It's peaking.
And you're trying to wake up and you've got to go, get your firearm, chamber around and do everything right. And then nothing happened. Nobody was there. But that happens in a split second.
Right.
And I'll tell you a funny story because that did happen a couple times. But the last time it happened, I got out of bed. I got my weapon, chambered it around, put my sandals on, walked to the garage, took a breath, opened the utility door, went in the garage, checked the house, walked it with my wife, and then took the round out of the gun or out of the chamber. And the alarm people never got the alarm. All that happened within under a minute, and they had never even gotten the alarm that our house had gone off. So I tell people it happens that fast. So to sit there and go, I got a gun, I go shooting every now and then, I'm ready. It's so important to come to classes like what you guys provide, to do some shooting, shoot multiple targets, shoot under some stress, because it's not shooting the silhouette at the range, every 2 minutes when your alarm goes off in the middle of the night.
Right. Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I do think, repetition is the mother of all skill. doing something repetitively hundreds and thousands of times is going to make you better in a stressful situation, because under that adrenaline we go from fine to gross motor skills, and what do we know, and how do we operate, so I don't disagree with you. Training is always an excellent thing, and I'm never going to discredit training, but also think of it this way, you drive on the highway, but you're not a NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
No one's expecting you to be a tier 1 operator.
Sure.
Just having a basic understanding. So a good example, Sutherland Springs shooting. Stephen Wilford, a plumber, comes out and no shoes on. I mean, he does the full Bruce Willis from Die Hard, right? And because the guy was shooting up the church, he had his AR. And it's funny when Stephen tells that story, because he shoots out here fairly regularly. He was telling the story about what happened, and his friend was with him. And he's like, my daughter heard, I was taking a nap, and my daughter heard what she thought was gunfire. She wakes me up, and Dad, I think there's gunfire outside. And he thought at first it was just somebody doing some construction, and then realized it was. So he grabbed his AR, and he goes, I grabbed it out of the cabinet, and I grabbed my magazine, and my magazine was only partially empty. And his friend smacks him, and he goes, this from the guy that always says, keep your magazines loaded. So Stephen started loading the magazine and had his daughter load more magazines because it was to distract her from what was happening. But Stephen was outside and stopped the shooter, and there's more of that story than that. But sure. Stephen's not he's been through an NRA instructor course when he was I think it was a Boy Scout leader. So his level of skill, it was adequate enough. I mean, so what I'm getting at is, don't make it so hard in your mind that you have to be, a Delta door kicker before you can defensively protect yourself. Majority of the time, that firearm, mere presence, display of that firearm will make the average criminal go a different direction. So yes, shooting is a good thing, getting training is a good thing, but don't make it so that's what I don't like is I get other instructors that, well, if you don't do this, you shouldn't be able to carry a gun. No, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, because your moms, your grandmas, your grandfathers, everyone has a right to keep and bear arms to protect themselves.
Sure.
And that the ability to carry that gun is majority of the time what is necessary. You need to have that gun in order for it to have any effectiveness in a gunfight, in a stressful situation. Working through those scenarios is always a good thing. But I play sports, but that doesn't mean I'm a professional athlete.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
That saying you own a guitar doesn't mean you're a rock star. No, it doesn't. And owning a gun doesn't mean I'm Jerry Michlik or something like that. But having some familiarity, knowing how to use it, and such like that is always a good thing. And so practice is the mother of all. Practice.
Let me ask you this: if you've got somebody who's let's say you've got somebody who's buying a gun for the first time. Now, I have a handful of them. And initially, I got a buddy of mine that I try and keep up with, and he makes way more money than I do, so it takes me a while to catch up to him. But when I first was looking at getting away from your typical hunting rifle and going an AR-style gun, I went 5.56. To me, that's a great gun to have. Everybody should have one. But I probably didn't need to get it in the order that I got it in, right? And so I started doing some research, and I've never been in the position where I've had to shoot in my house. I've just, read things online. I try to think about them. 5.56 in the house without a suppressor is probably a bad idea. If somebody's buying a gun for the house, what would you recommend somebody buy? Maybe somebody who's not typically your average gun person. That way, I know you guys rent out guns, and it seems like that started happening a handful of years ago. But before, I wasn't aware that people rented out guns. So, like, if I wanted one, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to buy a 9mm because I've never shot anything.
That's what you told your wife. I guess I got to buy another gun.
Yeah. And eventually I came back.
Try it.
Eventually I had to come back to that 6-hour MPX just because it's pretty. Yeah. But what do you recommend for somebody who's going to go get a gun, something for the house, maybe for travel if they're constantly on the road?
So that's kind of a loaded question in some ways, because it's kind of like, what car do you recommend? Well, we're all different, right? I mean, what are you going to use it for? So when somebody comes in, I want to buy a gun. Okay, so what's the purpose? Do you want it at home defense? Do you want to be able to carry it? Do you go hunting? X, Y, and Z. because any gun's better than no gun. As much as the 22 is terrible for self-defense, it's better than your airsoft gun.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes from there. Then the advantage of a handgun is it's easy to maneuver, it's easy to carry. The disadvantage is it's the most difficult platform to shoot because you have 2 points of contact versus 3 points with like a shotgun or a rifle. So, you know, what's their budget? Because if you've got some disposable income, once you start buying guns, it's kind of an addictive sport.
Sure.
You're not a woman, but how many pairs of shoes do you own?
Me?
Different shoes for different purposes, right?
Yeah, I got tennis shoes and then work boots.
There you go.
Just 2 pair.
There you go. Just 2 pair.
Flip flops. I take it back.
You've got a couple different varieties.
Yeah.
In other words, it depends on what you're doing.
And that's the same thing with holsters too. Because I tell everybody, people ask what kind of holster, and it's like, well,
everyone's different.
There's a lot of holsters out there, and it's I guess it's the tool. You know, something I always go back to is like my wife loves a little gun because she's got little hands. You know, but then I try and explain to her, you know, well, there's going to be a lot of recoil in that 380.
Right.
You know, you may want to go something a little bit bigger that absorbs a little more of that recoil.
That's kind of the misnomer, especially with ladies, is, oh, it's a small gun. It's perfect for her. Well, you know, what is it? Newton's second law. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So the more mass the firearm has, the less felt recoil you're having.
Yeah.
If that new shooter, like let's talk about one that was the Ruger LCP or the Keltec P3AT. It was the original smallest little pocket gun. You know, that's what Rick Perry shot the coyote was.
Oh, that
with the Ruger
I went
LCP.
and bought one of those.
Yep, the Governor Special had the coyote on it and everything. It's a small little 380, held 6+1. Still, they have a refined version, the LCP2, which is a better version. The downside, such a small slide to grip.
Yeah.
Terrible sights. But for a true pocket pistol, it's great. But that is not what I steer in the direction of a new shooter, because it's a hard gun to master. So usually when they're new shooters, like in the ladies class, the smallest gun we have in there, that's not caliber wise, but the smallest gun we have is the 6 hour P238. It's a 1911 style 380. So it's got a nice trigger. It's got a traditional safety. Good sights. Feels good to shoot. But most of them end up enjoying like the mid-sized Glocks or an XD or, you know, something that's got a little bit more size to it that they think, oh, it's too big of a gun. But that recoil's absorbed tremendously. So when somebody's new gun, let's figure out what you're trying to do with it first versus this and this only. The AR-15, it's the cool guy. It's a smoking jacket gun. It's a good, fine firearm. And you're talking about suppressed inside the house. I've changed my thoughts process on that. I used to agree with you on the suppressed inside the house, because having shot in buildings, your freaking ears ring loud. There's some under adrenaline. You ever been deer hunting?
Yeah.
Okay. You get a buck fever. You shoot that round at that deer. You weren't probably wearing hearing protection.
Yeah.
Did your ears ring after that?
As long as it was the barrel was outside the window, wasn't too bad.
Generally not, right?
Yeah. Because
of that adrenaline and stuff like that, and your adrenaline's going through and everything. But it's when you're shooting normally, poof, and it's loud.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to think suppressed inside the building is great, and I think that's in an offensive role. If you're a door kicker, that's great. But in a defensive role, I want to be the loudest mofo in that house.
Yeah.
If that guy's coming in and they hear wham, 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 their sphincter tightens up and they go a different freaking direction.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about that, just, violence of action, pulling the trigger and somebody going, I'm getting the frick out of here, versus, the cool guy movie, and they're, the body's hitting the floor type thing. You're smoking a cigarette, drinking, and that type of stuff. So yes and no as far as suppress inside the house. It's not a bad thing, but I'm in a defensive posture. I want those other people to go the freaking other way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And yeah, I want to save my ears at the same time. But tinnitus, I live with it every day. You'll be able to live with it every day. But if I can get them I start engaging them, and that group of guys, home invaders, goes a different direction. That's a good thing, because that's usually what you see, right? On these.
When you see news articles.
Yeah, the Ring cameras, when people are coming in, all of a sudden they see the homeowners starting to engage them through it. They turn tail and run. Because most of your average low-life criminals, they're not looking for the hard target.
Yeah.
The the person the determined attacker, that's the one you need to be worried about. Somebody that's got some skill sets or is determined to go after you and you only,
Let me ask you this, as far as something like that, what is and sometimes I maybe overthink things, I don't know, but what is a caliber that you would not want for home defense? Are they all going to end up at my neighbor's house, or
okay,
or is there a certain caliber that you're less likely?
So
to do
over
that?
penetration, I think it is an issue to a certain extent. People talk about, well, it's gonna, like that 500 Smith and Wesson, when the burglar across the street's hiding behind in your neighbor's kitchen behind the refrigerator, and you want to stop them, that type of power. But I think there is something to be said about over penetration. Your Barrett 50 BMG is not going to be your ideal home defense rifle, because that 600 grain is going to punch through everything, and including the person. But I don't think for most of what you're looking at for self-defense, over penetration is an issue. It's not that it can't be an issue, but what I think you need to look at more is, am I going to be able to hit my target?
Yeah.
Because most of the time when that round hits the soft tissue, that's when it starts slowing and losing energy. It versus if it hits the sheetrock and everything else like that. Yes, that's a concern. That is absolutely a concern. But I'm more concerned about, am I going to be able to hit my target accurately? And that's the beauty about the 223 5.56. Fairly low recoil. Most people can carry that rifle, and they can hit their target fairly accurately out at distances, a couple hundred yards without even any sort of optics.
Sure.
Old iron sights work very well. So I get less concerned about that.
Okay.
I'm more concerned about, am I going to miss?
Right.
If I miss, it doesn't matter if I'm shooting somebody at somebody with a 22. That 22 can still go across the street and do damage. So I want to be able to hit my target.
More accuracy more than anything.
Accuracy is everything.
Yeah.
Accuracy, it trumps all. I mean, you can talk about stopping power. Stopping power, there's nothing. Stopping power is when you shoot somebody with a 12 gauge double-aught buck or a slug, they generally don't get back up. Stopping power is that.
Yeah.
Handguns, stopping power really is not saying handguns do stop people, but I need to get rid of their desire to harm me or my family. So when I shoot somebody with that handgun, I'm trying to shoot them and hit them so they lose that desire, because human body's pretty impressive. You can destroy the heart, and the body can go off of pure adrenaline 10 to 12 seconds. 10 to 12 seconds of a guy charging you with a knife. It's a long freaking time.
That's a lot of ground they can cover.
Yeah, it is. And that's the other thing. I don't think so there is no silver bullet per se when it comes to self-defense. All skills help. Distance is your friend. Distance is cheap insurance. There's a reference called the 21-foot rule, the Tooler drill. Mm-hmm. And, there's some debate of why Officer Tooler started it and such, but it's basically this. You need distance to allow that time for that round to do what it's supposed to, as well as the guy charging at you with a knife. If he's within that 21 feet, he can close that distance in about 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
The average law enforcement officer can fire 2 rounds from holster in about 1.5 to 2 seconds. So that's not much time, space, distance there. So you need to give yourself distance to back off to get out of that line of attack. And going back to the self-defense and the stopping power, it's more importantly keeping your distance, because the distance also gives you options, right? If that potential attacker's coming at you and you see them coming across you at the parking lot, the closer they get, the less and less options you have, right? So distance is that cheap insurance, even if you have a firearm, because ultimately our last line of defense is the firearm.
Yeah.
I do not want to get into a gunfight unless it's absolutely no other options. And that's the 45-year-old guy in me talking, not the 18, 19-year-old full of piss and vinegar type attitude, where I don't want to get into it. I was listening to a guy named Jocko, what's his last name, Willink, or anyhow, he's a former frog guy, and he was talking about self-defense, and he goes, unless, he's a ground fighter, he's a jiu-jitsu guy and everything, and he's like, somebody asked him, what are you going to do if somebody comes up to you? Well, if I can give them my wallet and they walk away, that's better for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the ground. I don't want to find out what they do or don't know. And I don't want to know if Murphy's on their side to help them out. Because, I know of lots of highly skilled men who are no longer here on this earth, and they were the better man, they had more skill sets and everything else. But all it takes is a little bit of luck for the other guy. And you have to be accurate. The other guy just has to be lucky.
And that's the important thing I think a lot of people need to understand is even if you're armed and you're trained, if you can do something to avoid pulling that trigger, you should do it.
Well, and, the opposite side of that, a lot of people you should do everything you can to de-escalate, and I agree with that. But there are some people that won't respond to anything other than the use of deadly force or the threat thereof.
And it's so hard to determine that in the middle of something happening.
Yeah.
It really is.
You have to trust your gut. In your adult life, how many times did you not trust your gut and you were completely wrong?
Yeah.
I think the older we get, we go with whatever our gut tells us because it's generally going to keep us alive. So if my gut, I tell people this: if somebody smells like a turd and looks like a turd, you're probably dealing with a turd.
Yeah.
So go with that gut instinct because it will keep you alive. And that doesn't mean I'm going to pull a gun and start shooting at them, but I'm definitely on a higher level of awareness. If I need to demonstrate that gun to tell them stop and go away, you can lawfully do so here in the state of Texas, and that may get them to go a different direction. One of the over the past year and a half, 2 years or so, with the country exploding in riots and demonstrations and stuff like that, and not every demonstration or riot, but most riots started out as a demonstration. Mm-hmm. Is you got to look at when I say, I guess, for lack of a better term, social justice warriors. Yeah. Somebody that's doing some sort of demonstration or something, they've got an agenda. It used to be where somebody was in your face or whatever, you could possibly de-escalate, and you still can. Your average drunk guy, tough guy attitude.
But when some people show, like you're getting to, when some people show up and they're hell-bent on having an outcome.
Yes, and they got the camera rolling.
Sure.
The Antifas of the world, where no de-escalation is going to work. Because their entire goal is to get you to do something, to get it on camera, to give them an excuse to fight back. Your best option there is to get out of that area as quickly as possible. Sometimes, or if you have to use violence, make it unadulterated violence where they don't want to get back up.
Right.
There is something to be said with true unadulterated violence makes people stop. You hit somebody so hard they never want to get back up again. That's the thing. Versus the force continuum. Well, if I do this, then and slowly escalate, it's not going to work. And with somebody that's got an agenda, where they're trying to create a spark or they're trying to get you on camera doing something, you have no other options but to shut your mouth and get the freak out of there if possible.
That's always, I guess, your first option is, let's say you're eating at a restaurant and something's going on. If your gut tells you, hey, this isn't going to turn out well, and you can get out of there, by all means, leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably key.
I often tell people in the LTC classes, when you're talking about mindset and such like that, there is nothing wrong with running through scenarios. So when you see news media, news stories, don't armchair quarterback it and say that guy was wrong or that guy was right. Just go, what would I do if I was in a similar scenario? Because that's how the brain generally works. You've run through these scenarios in your head. You thought about what's the best answer for me. And then if that situation or something similar ever arises, your brain goes to that file, opens up that file and goes, hey, this is what we decide we're going to do. That's what we're going to go with. Versus you hadn't thought it through, so you kind of make a quick, rash decision and you're going,
then you're behind.
The next day or that night you're in jail looking in the mirror going, what the freak did I just do?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to try to prevent. So, run through those scenarios. There's nothing paranoid about it. It's just, same thing, if I'm in a fire, how do I escape? If, the airplane, at the beginning of the airplane flight, here's your evacuation procedures and stuff like that. So you mentally go through it and go, okay, probably won't need it, but if I do, what am I going to do?
You've already thought that had those thought processes.
If you haven't thought about what happens if you pull up to an intersection and somebody tries to jack you out of your car or truck, you've been living under a rock.
Yeah.
It's just so, think through those scenarios. That helps. It's nothing paranoid. A little bit weird sometimes, but nothing paranoid about it.
Yeah. I think after the last couple of years, things that used to be really weird are less weird.
Yeah. It's like, when am I going to wake up from this weird reality that we're experiencing? You think it's going to stop, and then something else happens, and then, I don't know. I don't know where this ends.
Yeah.
Or how it ends or whatever. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. We're just about done on time, but license to carry. So I have my thought processes on why you still need to take the classes and you still need to get the license.
Versus constitutional carry.
Yeah. So if you can kind of clear that up for folks, to me, anytime you can go get information from somebody else, the more information you can get on anything, the better. So to me, that's huge with the license to carry classes, and that's why you should still take them. But go ahead.
So when constitutional carry has been talked about for over a decade, I mean for a long time, where it gets introduced and doesn't get much traction. Well, this last time it got traction, and I remember putting out a video on through social media. We're pro constitutional carry. And I got a lot of feedback from other instructors where they didn't like the idea of constitutional carry because it ends their bottom line, or they have the mindset that in order to carry a gun, you have to go through this training and all this, the boys club type thing. My thought is this: the founders, when they said shall not be infringed, that's not with an asterisk next to it. Your right to keep and bear arms is given to you in those founding documents. In that Bill of Rights, and that it shouldn't be licensed. It never should have been licensed. I mean, there's some reasons for the licensing when you go back generations and generations, but it should never have been licensed. So we're very big advocates of the constitutional carry, which isn't even true constitutional carry, but it's closer. That being said, we're one of the largest training schools in the entire freaking state of Texas. We make a lot of money. Used to make a lot more money off of license to carry classes. There's been months where I'd teach over 800, 900 people in 1 month.
Wow.
Yeah. A good example would have been Sutherland Springs. 2 months in a row, we taught almost 900 people every month.
Wow.
And when you start doing those numbers, or, gross sales versus net, those are pretty good. That's a good business right there. But we're for the constitutional carry. Now, there's things that the license to carry has advantage of that constitutional carry does not. One of the biggest advantages is it bypasses the NICS background check. So when you have a license to carry, it's got a much more thorough background investigation than the NICS quick FBI check, where it's just kind of a skimming. The LTC is card carrying good guy status. You haven't had a class A or B in the past 5 years. You haven't had 2 of them for drugs or alcohol in 10 years. You have firearms rights and everything else. So it bypasses that, because all we do as a gun dealer is we pull up the state of Texas website that allows us to do a quick check. We punch in that number of your license carry. Yep, that's a verified status. We don't have to do a background check. And people say, well, what's that have to do with anything? Background checks, I've never been delayed. The opening weeks of the pandemic, where everyone was out buying guns, even if, like yourself, you have more guns than you need, buy more guns, right? Yeah. Because you never know, or it gives you a good excuse to go buy more guns. It made me
buy that MPX.
Yeah, it made you. Twisted your arm. So normally on the NICS background check, if there's a delay for whatever reason, as a gun dealer, I believe it's 3 days. After 3 days, we have the ability, if we haven't heard back from ATF of proceed or not proceed, we have the ability as the gun dealer to make a command decision of, okay, proceed or not proceed. Normally, during the early days of the pandemics, when the NICS system shut down, was overwhelmed, and I know that's hard to believe that a government computer website got overwhelmed, but it got overwhelmed where the system was just being rammed. There was a minimum, I believe it was a 30 to 45 day wait. ATF just, if delay, everyone. So people that needed a gun all of a sudden, that didn't own a gun, that didn't prepare ahead of time, they're sitting there waiting for what? I don't know, a system to catch up that was overwhelmed. And if they needed to defend themselves, they go down to Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a baseball bat.
Yeah.
But those that had an LTC pay the fee. We do a 4473, which is just the paperwork of the transaction. I don't have to do a background check. You walk out that day. So there's a lot to be said for that. The other thing that the LTC does, there's places that you can carry with an LTC that you're not able to under constitutional carry. And I think, one of the biggest undervalued, but really goes a long way, is card carrying good guy status with law enforcement. So when a law enforcement officer has an interaction with you and you show them identification, if your LTC is attached to that identification, whether you are carrying or not, right away that officer knows that, they've had a background check. This is not some gangbanger wannabe. This guy or gal has has a clear background. In other words, it puts them at ease almost right away.
So it almost doesn't. It almost does the opposite of sometimes what I was thinking. Where or now there's the thought, well, this guy has a gun.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So there's some validity in that.
Even if you're not carrying.
There's some validity in that in other states. So Texas, we are very proud of our guns, and we're very pro-gun. Even though there's other states that are actually have better license or gun laws, but we're Texas, so we obviously do have the best gun laws. But when you're talking about somebody that's, if you were carrying a gun in, say, New York or New Jersey, that's not a part of the culture. Mm-hmm. That's not a thing. So law enforcement here in Texas know that most Texans own guns. But that licensed carry means, you've got a clean background.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what it means. And that doesn't mean if you don't have a licensed carry, you don't have a clean background, because there's a lot of people that have never wanted to get a licensed carry because they don't want to be on a list. Well, I do understand that. But to me, the advantages of getting out of, I'm not saying it'll help you in Selma, but anywhere else you get pulled over in San Antonio for doing 5 or 10 over the speed limit, law enforcement officers generally give you a warning, because they see you as part of the card-carrying good guy status. While the constitutional carry, it doesn't have the same, you don't have that same response with law enforcement. So that's one of the advantages. To me, that's the two biggest advantages.
I think another advantage is, like I said earlier, the information that you guys provide to people,
right?
In their class. I mean, that's something that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
So, you like anything, you can go to Google and you can go to WebMD and diagnose that you have, brain cancer, or maybe you don't. But sometimes it's nice to go in front of a real doctor that knows what the heck they're doing and go, okay. Same thing with licensed carry classes. And I'm not saying we're better than anybody else out there, but when you go to a subject matter expert in any field, I can plumb. I can figure out fixtures and plumbing and everything, but I probably can't do what you do, right? And that's from experience. That's what it is right there. So when you go to a subject matter expert and you have an interaction with them, and it's quality interaction versus watching a video on YouTube or Google where you can't ask questions, I think there's a lot to be said for face-to-face interactions, because all of us have different questions. All of us have different ways of responding. And so, there's the training, and the training's been watered down over the years. Used to be, if you took my class in Shirts, it was a 10 to 15 hour class. It was an all-day affair. We could dump a ton of information your way, talk about a lot of different things. State's got it down to about a 4-hour class right now. So basically, we talk about the use of force, deadly force, when you can usually legally pull the trigger here in the state of Texas and hopefully not go to jail, which is kind of nice to hear from somebody that knows what they're talking about versus going to Reddit and finding out that that person doesn't know what they're talking about, but they're a keyboard warrior. And especially in this industry, the gun industry, there's tons of keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Everybody knows everything.
The tactical Timmy crowd is very strong.
Yeah.
Whatever, dude. I don't care.
And that's something that I think has a lot of weight, is to be able to take a class that you guys or somebody else provides, and to learn that information firsthand. To be able to get that knowledge and add that to, again, going back to thinking about what would I do in a certain situation. Well, now you have more information to add to those thoughts and those directions of what you might do.
That stuff might help you in court if you ever find yourself in front of a grand jury also saying, okay, what training classes have you ever done? It helps build your character. And of course, the other guy's attorney's job is to discredit you. In other words, you haven't had enough training, or you had too much training. You should have done something different. But it helps in front of that jury to go, okay, this guy or gal has done this and this and this and this, to make sure that they've got as much knowledge and information. So let's put it more in the ball in their favor, that they were acting in the right versus shooting from the hip type thing, knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
And, where'd you get your training from? Well, I watched some Google and I played Black Ops a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. But let's, so from a liability perspective, training doesn't hurt either.
Yeah.
And, there is such thing as bad training, but generally any training is better than no training. And whether that just be a verbal information, a classroom, or an actual range environment where you're doing an advanced class or something of some sorts, getting that knowledge. And also look at, the guns aren't just for self-defense, although every gun is designed to kill something.
Yeah.
People like, well, that gun's not designed to kill people. Every gun's designed to kill something. Yeah. But there's the shooting sports, man. There's actually shooting sports where it's kind of like, hey, this is kind of fun. This is a lot of enjoyment. You know, does it help me with self-defense? Yeah. But also I enjoy it doing it, you know.
And I think that happens with a lot. I love taking new people to go shoot. And my thought process is, even with people that tell me I don't want anything to do with guns, I tell everybody at least understand how they behave, how they work, how they function. That way, if you're ever in a position where you need to take control of a firearm, you can do so safely.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but once I bring people to go shoot, or again, like I said, we go to my sister's and shoot. Once they get over that initial, the sound, the bang, the fire, the noise, the recoil, and then other people doing it, they enjoy it because there's that strive for accuracy, right? You're trying to get a tight grouping, and it's addictive. It really
kind of
is.
It's that dopamine feed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be said for an enjoyable shooting experience, and that's what we're trying to strive out here, having a good experience and not having the attitude that, you know, it's a certain club that only certain members of society should only be able to carry guns. You know, not all of us are John Wick.
Yeah.
You know, being able to protect yourself. So I do enjoy it. I enjoy my job, even though it's not really a job. It's our family business. You know.
Yeah.
My oldest son started working for us recently, and he's finishing up his college and stuff like that, but he wants to work for the company because he's seen this company grow from what it was nothing to, man, we're doing okay.
Well, man, I tell you what, when I saw you were in a storefront in a strip mall.
Yeah.
And now you got 120 something acres out here.
Yep, I've got 27 employees on payroll. Every time I do payroll every 2 weeks, I just look at the amount of checks I write, and I'm just like, what the heck, man? This is, you know, this is a salary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A yearly salary every couple weeks, it seems like. And when I started doing this crap in 2005, which was like 16, 17, I'm terrible at math, years ago, I kind of thought myself, well, someday I might be there. But now we're here and we're growing even more. You know, I'm writing checks out this past week I bought almost $20,000 worth of golf carts on Monday.
Would you ever think you'd buy $20,000?
Holy crap. And that's the cheap golf carts. Golf carts are expensive.
Yeah, they're a hot commodity with people nowadays.
Yeah,
So
and I'm just, to myself, in my mind, the ability to do that is just, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's what growing this business. And I attribute that to having good people around us and treating people the way they want to be treated, and not having the mindset of I'm a tactical Timmy type attitude.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're trying to have a good experience. If you don't have a good experience as a shooter, you don't buy guns, you don't buy ammo.
Yeah.
And that's not good for anybody. Because the more people that are pro-gun or not anti-gun, let's put it that way, the more people that are not anti-gun, the less the anti-gun or the control crowd is able to take away your Second Amendment rights. That slippery slope that's often referred to, especially in the Second Amendment community, is a very true thing. I mean, years ago I used to think, okay, there's a gun control, there's some reasonable gun laws and blah, blah, blah. Now anymore, my opinion is this. There's a line in the sand. Any law is an infringement on your Second Amendment rights. Period. End of story. Because I know what happens. They take it and they snowball it, and it grows and grows. And, a little bit here, a little bit here. And now, you know, you find yourself like Australia.
Yeah.
Australia's freaking under a tyranny siege just for the COVID craziness.
I was just fixing to.
COVID's a very real disease,
Yeah.
but the tyrants are out there using it to grow their power. And Australia was disarmed in the mid 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah,
so
I think you're right.
they don't have a way to fight back.
I told my wife I was watching some videos on YouTube, and something came up, and it was like a commercial or a review of a self-defense weapon from England. I don't know how it came up on my feed, but so I clicked on it, and it's this huge gun that looks like it's out of the Roger Rabbit movie, and it's got a wheel in it with 6 rubber balls you put in there, and you got to pull a lever, and you pull the wheel out, put 6 rubber balls in, and you shoot. And he shot it at a cardboard box, and he shot 3 times, and 2 of them went through, 1 didn't. And I told my wife, I said, this is how you have to defend your life in a country without a Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And it's scary.
It is.
You know, and then when you talk about things like in Australia and just other countries in general, it's like that Second Amendment is a lot more important than what people understand. And like you said, most people want to be, I don't know, most people try to look at something and go, okay, well, I can be rational. And okay, like you said, we'll cut back here, we'll shave a little bit there. And there's never an end to it. Because now we got to keep cutting back, got to keep shaving on the Second Amendment. And now all of a sudden, you've lost more than you expected to lose.
Right. And people think, prior to the Summer of Love, where in 2019, where the entire country was on fire in the world in some ways, people, you only need 8 rounds, 10 rounds. Why would you need 30 rounds? Well, you got freaking riots going on outside your house, and the only way you can possibly stop them from breaking into your business is the ability to have multiple rounds. And it's one of those things. It was an eye-opener.
Yeah.
That was the beauty about the Summer of Love. Even the anti-gun, it didn't matter what political aisle you were on, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever, socialist. Everyone realizes, man, when evil's outside my door, it's nice to be able to protect myself and my family and my stuff. Yeah. Because they don't care. The crowd mentality is very real.
Well, when things were getting as bad as they were, it was so obvious if you weren't being ignorant to the fact that there's a certain point when things get so bad, and it did, where the police are not going to respond. They can't. They can do a lot. But when it gets as bad as it did up north, or even on the West Coast, San Antonio wasn't as bad as when the Spurs won a championship, but they still had a little bit of stuff going on down there. But it's like when it's that bad, it's the response times go through the roof, even if they can get
or
to
the lack of response because they've been defunded, or anytime they do something.
Austin's one of those places.
Or the law enforcement are like, look, if I do something, you're going to arrest me or hold me on criminal charges. Look at those Border Patrol agents.
Yeah.
God bless those guys, doing what they're supposed to do, what they're told to do, which is to protect the border from just people filtering in. And they're doing their job, and they're not being overly violent to people that are being violent towards them, and they're being held on criminal charges. And you're like, at a certain point, like, well, screw this. I'm not going to do it. Why am I laying my butt on the line just so you can critique everything I do and put me in jail potentially? Screw it. I won't respond.
I was telling you about my sister's place. It's out between George West and Frere, and I'm originally from George West. And I'd say earlier this year, you don't see quite as much as you had on social media, but daily there were probably anywhere from 1 to 5 bailouts in George West a day. It's a town of like 2,600 people. You had anywhere from 4 to 40 people running into the woods. And my sister lives out on her ranch, and after a while, it's like her and her neighbors and other friends of mine that live on ranches are like, dude, we can't leave the house without having our gun on us because we don't know what's out here.
Right.
And I tell you what, man, it's a scary thing. It's really, really a scary thing.
A lot of those illegals are good men and women. They're just trying to make a better life for themselves, and I don't blame them. I don't agree with how they're doing it, but I don't blame them.
Sure.
But there's a lot of evil men that are using our open borders to sneak in through. So yeah, you don't see that on the news very much because it doesn't help with whoever's agenda.
Right. And one thing that kind of threw me off, and again, I know we're kind of on time, but one thing that kind of threw me off, and I may be way off base, but there were so many people that would come across and immediately look for the Border Patrol because they knew they weren't going to get sent back. So the people that were running through fences and bailing out of trucks, to me, it's kind of like, well, what are you up to?
Right.
Because if you weren't up to anything, you just go to the Border Patrol.
Right. You don't want to be flagged. You're already flagged in the system.
Yeah.
And you might be up to no good, and you're a coyote, and you're running something or doing something, and you don't want that because we're way too nice to people that come in here illegally. And generally, lately, it seems like we put them on a bus or fly them somewhere in middle America, process them, and just let them go. And like, oh, good, they're in here. So,
well, you're fixing to make me go off on a tangent. So
yeah,
I'll tell you what, man.
We're not going to go talk about guns anymore.
We're kind of hitting a tangent. I know you got some time constraints, but Josh, I appreciate your time. Thank you for sitting with me. I know you got a lot going on. Tell everybody where they can find you, y'all's location, website, stuff like that.
LoneStarHandgun.com. We're in the I guess, southeast part of San Antonio near I-10 and 1604.
This is Atkins-ish, right?
Well, yeah, it's we're unincorporated Bexar County. So
Okay.
City of San Antonio has got their claws into us that they could incorporate us someday. But we're in unincorporated Bexar County. We're near I-10 and 1604, the cheap part of that town, not the other expensive Lock and Terra side. We're the largest shooting range in San Antonio. Targets out to 300 yards. We got lots of stuff going on here, but I don't care where anybody goes to shoot as long as they go shoot, because the more pro gun, the more trigger pullers we have, the better it is going to be for the community. So I'm an advocate of somebody going out and shoot. We try to make it a good experience for you out here.
And you guys are LoneStarHandgun.com?
LoneStarHandgun.com.
Okay. And then social media,
We're on the Facebook. We're on Instagram. I don't think we do anything on Twitter. It feeds through the Twitter. All that stuff has been difficult for me to grasp because I come from a community background where you don't advertise yourself on what you do and stuff like that, and I've always hated that, but that's also I'm starting to realize, and I've started realizing more and more over the years, that's how a business grows. Look at me, here's what I do.
Yeah. Because
you could be a former Delta Force or a frogman, and unless somebody knows about you, they don't. Let's be honest, SEALs are never hard to find because it's kind of like a CrossFitter. Within a few minutes they'll tell themselves. Texans are the same way too.
Yeah.
Within a few minutes we'll tell you from
We're
Texas.
flashy as hell, man.
Yes, we are. Whenever you're in another state, you see somebody with that Lone Star flag or patch, you're like,
oh yeah,
hey,
we're instantly better
Texans.
than everybody else.
Yep. It's that arrogance. But yeah, we're open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. On Saturday nights we have low lights. Once a month we have a low light that goes until 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Next Saturday. So if you want to practice low light skills and not have to go through a class, we'll shut off the lights and you can put on your weapons mounted pistol light because we don't have the rifle range is not open for low light because there's just too many crazy things that can happen with a long gun. But it's good stuff. We enjoy it. Most of my staff is all veterans of some capacity, and
you have date nights and ladies' nights?
Date night on Friday night starting at 5 o'clock. It's half off. You can bring your girlfriend, boyfriend, bromance, whatever, 2-for-1 basically shooters, and shoot until we're closed, which is usually 7 o'clock on Friday nights unless we're open that late nights. We have competitions, events that'll start back up as soon as the ammo catches back up with like 3-gun, sporting clays, got archery. Lots of stuff going on out here.
That's awesome. And if you haven't shot steel targets are way better than
reactive
paper.
steel. We have the ability to shoot paper on the private base, but reactive steel, you hit it, bangs it, moves.
It's a lot more fun.
If you miss it, you're cursing at yourself. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate it, Josh.
All right, no problem.
And I'll let you get back to work, man.
All right,
I appreciate
thanks,
your
sir.
time, and thanks for being on the show, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.